Hello everyone, Max here with Fiction Rant, bringing you part 2 of my series discussing the Borg vs. Cybermen contest. This part will discuss how fast the ships and soldiers in each universe can move at both sublight and faster than light, or FTL, speeds. This section is going to be very lopsided in terms of available information, mainly because the Borg, while still mysterious in Star Trek, are still relatively well documented. Meanwhile, with the Cybermen, their ships have only been represented on screen a handful of times, and on those occasions, they don't actually do much moving around. By its nature, Doctor Who does just a lot of teleporting around, so how fast anything is actually moving through space is basically never actually explained in any meaningful way, in particular with Cybermen ships. They're used more as a setting rather than something interacting with the setting most of the time. That is, the Doctor ends up aboard a Cyberman ship or something like that and then has an adventure, as opposed to him being somewhere else and then watching on sensors as a bunch of cyber ships drop out of warp or something like that. All that to say, I have no idea how Cyberman FTL works or how fast it is. I just have to assume that they have it, because if they didn't, then they wouldn't be much threat in the Doctor Who universe, especially because they seem to be able to traverse between galaxies. The Borg, meanwhile, utilize transwarp to get around the galaxy. The actual numbers associated with transwarp are a bit vague, but in any case it allows Borg ships to travel at potentially millions of times the speed of light. In the Voyager finale, they were able to traverse the length of the whole Milky Way by utilizing a transwarp hub, which allowed them access without needing a significant ship modification. This journey took about 5 minutes to cover about 30,000 light years to get home. This means that they were traveling in excess of 250 million times the speed of light. It's important to note, however, that this was by using an actual transwarp hub, not an onboard transwarp drive. Earlier in the show, Voyager managed to pilfer a transwarp coil from the Borg, and before it burned out, they were able to travel about 20,000 light years in a couple days, making their speed between 1 million and 10 million times the speed of light. So, the speeds can vary quite a bit based on application and plot convenience and, how exactly they're doing it. An important limitation of transwarp drive is that it only functions within artificially constructed transwarp corridors. This is why, in the case of things like the Borg attacking Earth, both during the TNG series and during First Contact, they didn't just jump a cube directly into Earth orbit, they instead got close enough and then used conventional warp drives to cover the remaining distance. As for ground forces, there's some oddities going on. Borg drones are not exactly what you'd call quick. They just kind of lumber around doing their tasks at slow walking speeds until threatened. That said, they have access to transporter technology, so they can be deployed where needed pretty rapidly. In Picard, it's even revealed that they have access to a spatial trajector technology, which allows them to be transported over many light years distance, as opposed to conventional transporters, which are good for a few thousand kilometers. That said, spatial trajectors were reserved specifically for emergency use by a Borg Queen, so they're presumably pretty costly to operate in some way. It's never really explained all that well. Cybermen, for the most part in their depictions, are pretty similar to Borg in terms of movement. They're typically very slow and have highly robotic movements. That is, they were, up until the Matt Smith episode Nightmare in Silver came out. In this episode, it was shown that the new and improved Cybermen models were capable of moving very quickly and could even fly. As for mobility devices analogous to transporters, from what I can dig up and remember, the Cybermen really don't have anything similar. They seem to rely more on conventional means of getting around, though, as I just mentioned, they're really, really fast at doing so, at least eventually. For most of their appearances, though, their means of spreading has been slow and methodical, often involving spreading out in secret before emerging and surprise attacking. Alright, there's my summary of the speed capabilities of the Borg and Cybermen. Please let me know in the comments if I managed to skip over anything important or if I'm mistaken about anything, and until next time, live long and prosper, and may the Force be with you.